Hello. Today I'd like to share some thoughts on empathy. I've talked about empathy in a number of videos, and I've been thinking about it a lot. Empathy is the ability to feel other people's feelings and put yourself in another being's shoes, metaphorically, to try to understand their feelings and actually feel them yourself as if you were them, but also their motivations, desires, fears. I think empathy helps connect people. There are a lot of good things about empathy. I think it also helps prevent harming people because, and not just people, it could be other beings like plants and animals. Because if you can feel what the other being is feeling and you hurt that being, then you can feel the hurt too. It's like by hurting the other being, you're actually hurting yourself. I think there's a lot of good things about empathy. And I think that can help us heal. A lot of us. I have run into some dangers with empathy, and that's what I want to talk about today. Because I've learned some things in my life, and there's some things that have become clear to me, actually fairly recently, over this past month. Things that I didn't understand about empathy and myself, and the dangers of empathy if you don't love yourself. And the dangers of empathy that could make you not love yourself. So, yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. And I haven't really put my thoughts together really in a well-defined talk about this, but I'm just gonna try. I've realized that I've allowed myself to be in a position where other people were aware of the empathy that I had turned on. Oh, that's important. I think that empathy is not just an on or off phenomenon. I think we can choose how much empathy we feel for other beings. It is. I think it is an active choice, but in some people, I think they don't consciously choose. In fact, maybe in the majority of life, we don't consciously choose how much empathy we're feeling. But you can. You can choose to feel a lot of empathy towards a being, or you could shut it off, or you could be somewhere in the middle. I've talked about this before in talking about duality and the trap of duality. You can have light and dark, the most blinding bright white light you can imagine, and the most blackest of darkness, like no light at all. But in between the two are all the different shades of gray, all the different colors, all the different levels of light intensity of those different colors and grays. An infinite number of different kinds of light perception between absolute darkness and absolute light. Empathy is like that too. We can choose where in that spectrum that you want to be. And it changes. It changes based on the situation and what you decide to do. An extreme example, before I go into my personal experiences, an extreme example of too much empathy in a situation is a situation I remember reading about in Octavia Butler's novel, Parable of the Sower. In Octavia Butler is an author who lived actually here in Seattle, and she wrote many books, novels, fiction novels. And in one of the novels, Parable of the Sower, one of the main characters is a lady who is an empath. Now that is an empath is somebody who essentially has their empathy turned on high all the time and is not really able to turn it down. It's like their sensitivity is turned up to the max, and the volume switch is broken. It's always high, and that's the main character in this novel. And she feels everything, everyone else's feelings. Now, you might think that, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I mean, that's great to be able to feel and be connected with everything. But there are problems that the character runs into. In the story, there are instances when people she cares about, like her boyfriend or family members, get injured. Like they get stabbed or something, or like that someone's attacking them, and someone gets stabbed, and then she feels like she got stabbed because she feels everything. So she feels just incredible pain from the stabbing, but it's not her body that got stabbed. It's her friend or her family member, and it incapacitates her. She can't help her friend out because she's in so much pain, just like her friend is. She's on the floor, writhing in pain, just like her friend, even though she doesn't have the knife wound in her belly. There's some interesting workarounds that she comes up with. Now, she doesn't really have a workaround for if her friend gets injured, but if, say, she is trying to incapacitate an attacker, it's better for her to kill the attacker than wound them. If she wounds them, then she is wounded too, essentially. But if she kills them just outright, then she doesn't feel pain because that person's dead. It's an interesting problem. But that's an extreme, and that's an extreme example of how empathy could be a problem if it incapacitates you. If you're feeling, you don't have to be an empath like that character, but if you're feeling so much from another person, and you're feeling their pain and it incapacitates you, that could be a problem. You might have to turn down the empathy slightly, and it's not 0 or 1, on or off. It's just think of it like a volume knob. Sometimes you just have to turn it down just a little bit so that you can actually help your friend out or your loved one. So that's one example of how empathy could be a problem. But the problem that I've learned and come to realize is I think more common and more dangerous. And that is the problem of being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't love themselves. That can be a huge problem for somebody who chooses to feel empathy for a person who doesn't love themselves. And we're going to explain that. That's what I wanted to talk about today. So, let's just imagine that you have a friend. And that friend has been going through a hard time. It seems like all sorts of bad luck has happened to that person. They lost their job, their car broke down, they're estranged from their family and friends, they feel alone, they don't really have hope. But they blame everybody else. They blame everybody else for their problems, without taking any responsibility for their own condition and the choices that they made, the many choices they made over years. They hate everybody. They hate themselves. They hate life. They think that life in the universe robbed them. It's unfair. Well, it could be a situation where that friend had some terrible things happen to them in life, maybe early on in life, like maybe their parents abandoned them when they were small children. Or when they were a small child, I should say. Maybe they always felt like they were never good enough, and that they weren't valued, and that nobody has loved them. They wanted love, but nobody loved them. And so they thought that they were unlovable, and so they hated themselves, and they hated everybody else. But in these situations, those feelings that I was talking about are often too painful to confront. The things I just talked about, if somebody is going through it, I've seen some people look at it straight on and say, okay, I've been through some really bad stuff. Yeah, there's been some bad luck, and but I made some of the choices that led me to get to where I am right now. So yeah, and there are choices that other people made that really hurt me. It's a combination of bad luck, other people's choices, and my own choices. And gosh, I really don't like where I am right now, so I'm going to make choices the best I can to live a different kind of life. That's really hard to do. That's super duper hard to do. And to admit to yourself that you are partially responsible, not even fully responsible, at least partially responsible for a tough situation that you're in, is very hard to do. In fact, most people don't want to go anywhere near that because it's too painful to think about. It's too painful to admit. So, if it's too painful to admit, but if it's true, but you don't want to face the truth, then you have to hide that truth under layers of lies that you tell yourself or other people. Well, it's usually both. I'm not responsible for where I am right now. I'm not responsible for the suffering that I'm feeling right now. This is everyone else's fault. This is the universe's fault. This is that person's fault. They screwed me over. How could that person abandon me? I hate them. I hate them. I wish something bad would happen to them. Because they are the reason why I'm suffering. So I wish that they would suffer like I'm suffering. I mean, this is how you run away from your own responsibility and the choices that led you down a path. Now, granted, other people's choices and luck have something to do with it too. But so does a person's choice. Many choices made every moment in life. Even seemingly small, inconsequential choices can have a huge impact on somebody's life later down the road. But it can be too painful to look at. So, somebody who is hiding from their own responsibility, their own choices that partially, at least, led to where they are. They're lying to themselves. They hate themselves. They hate the universe. They hate where they are. They hate other people. They hate life. Now say that's your friend. Say that's your friend and you care about them. You might even love them and wish for their well-being, their spiritual well-being. And because they're your friend and you care about them and you wish for their well-being, their spiritual well-being, you open up your empathy towards them. I think you can see where this is going. So you open up your empathy towards this friend who is in a bad place, a really tough spot. And then you start feeling some of their feelings. You start feeling hate and anger, outrage, this desire to kill and destroy. That's both outward and inward, both outward to the world and inward to the self. You start feeling this overwhelming sadness and loneliness. You feel this deep sense of betrayal, disappointment, confusion. You start to see the world from your friend's eyes. including the layers of lies that that friend is telling themselves and other people, because you're empathizing with them. So you can see these lies, and you can feel maybe something that, if you're very perceptive, maybe you can feel that there's something that that person's running away from. But because you're empathizing, now it's you that feels that you're running away from something that's deep down, that's true, but is covered up in layers of lies. And now you feel that too. And you feel that it's unacceptable to delve deeper and look at it. In fact, it's terrifying. You just want to run away from it. That's a lot to feel. But let's just say that you really do love this person, this friend. And, you started feeling these things, and it's overwhelming. It's a lot of unpleasant feelings. It makes you hate yourself and the world. But is it actually you hating the world and yourself, or are you feeling that from the other person? But let's just say you spend a lot of time with this friend. You live with them. Maybe they're even your boyfriend, or girlfriend, or wife, or husband. Maybe they're your brother or sister. Maybe they're your mother or father, or your son, or your daughter. Let's just say you live with them every day, and you spend all day with them, and then you sleep in the same house. And you have been for months or years or decades. Now what happens with empathy? You can start to believe that what you're feeling from the other person is yourself. That's actually you that is hating the world and hating yourself, and feeling anxious and fearful and guilty, excessively guilty, or maybe not. Maybe you're running away from guilt and you're lying and blaming others. But you get confused about what's your own feelings and what's the other person's feelings, your friend. And it gets even more twisted than that. Let's say your friend realizes that you are feeling this empathy and you are sharing their feelings. Let's say they realize, my life sucks, but the person I live with, Gooby, he can empathize with me, and he can feel what I'm feeling. Oh, I'm not alone anymore. This person can feel what I'm feeling. Now it gets even more twisted, because your friend can then give you feelings that they don't want. Let me explain how that happens. let's say your friend has something very stressful happen to them, and all these feelings that are always there just get magnified in a moment. And it's just so painful and unbearable. Your friend. They don't want to feel it. These feelings are so painful. But they know that their friend, well, you or me, that their friend is empathetic and can feel what they're feeling. They can choose to transfer those feelings to the empathetic friend. And the way they do that is by words of abuse. It can be outright anger. It can be outright anger and threats of violence. It can be blaming that friend who's empathetic for the problems. So that friend can say, so it's a little bit clearer. I'm just gonna say I'm the empathetic friend, and then now there's the friend who is wanting to displace these feelings that they don't want anymore, that it's too painful to feel. That friend can then blame me and say, look what you did, Gooby, you're a terrible person, like how could you have done that to me? You're the reason why I'm suffering so much. This is your fault, and you screwed me over, you ruined my life, I don't know why you did that. Okay, now this is now I may have done something that was maybe not right. I may have done something, I might have said something that maybe had a little tinge of pride in it, or I might have said something that betrayed trust in some way. But the magnitude of the vitriol, the blame and hatred and terrorizing and making me feel worthless is way beyond the action that had occurred. The action that I did as Gooby might have been slightly wrong, but it opens the door for that friend who has all these feelings that they don't want to then pry that door open and let the floodgates of horrible emotions get focused on me, Gooby. Now, this could be you too. And then all sorts of abusive language comes out. And that is where that person puts themselves on a pedestal, where they're the victim, and they didn't do anything wrong, but Gooby or you did all these things wrong, and that's the reason why their life is horrible and they have all these terrible feelings, and how could you, and all these things. Now as an empathetic friend, Gooby, me, I was already feeling that friend's feelings. I was already feeling the terror, the fear, the guilt, the shame, the anxiety, the worry, the feelings of worthlessness. I was already feeling that because I was being empathetic to my friend and I was wishing their well-being. But now they are telling me that I am to blame for their life. And now I'm feeling that I really am the source of their horrible feelings, because I did something wrong. And now I'm feeling terrible. Not only am I feeling their feelings that they don't want to feel, but now I believe I am the source of all of those terrible feelings. And then that friend, because they know that I can feel their feelings, that friend feels justified. And now they really do believe their own lies. Oh, Gooby really is the source of my horrible life and all the feelings that I feel. I really hate Gooby. Gooby's such a terrible person. He even admits it. If it weren't for Gooby, I would be living a much better life. I wish ill well towards Gooby. I wish he would die. I wish he would eat crap before he dies. I wish that he's alone and dies of cancer. Now that friend has a target, an external target for all of the things, the terrible things that they've been feeling. Now it's not their fault anymore. It's not their fault their life is the way that it is. It was Gooby's choices that made their life that way. It wasn't the friend's choices. Now they don't feel so bad. Well, it wasn't my fault that I'm the way that I am. This transfer of feelings that person can't handle. They can't even see, they can't handle it. They can't look at themselves. Now they've transferred it through an empathetic person. That is, I think, the danger of empathy. Now, sadly, I've lived this life. I've lived this life for 40 years. And it's taken me this long to realize that. And I've been going to therapy for the last 3 months, and honestly, it's been wonderful to talk with a therapist and come to an understanding about this problem. The problem of empathy when you're around somebody who cannot love themselves, who doesn't have the courage to look at life as it is and themselves as they are, and the choices that they made. This is a horribly dangerous position for somebody who has empathy. Well, I'm glad I'm learning this at the age of 40. Better now than never. I always wondered why I ended up in situations where I was taking on people's feelings that they didn't want. I chose a job. Well, I chose neurosurgery as a job, but in neurosurgery, there's lots of different options. You could become a brain tumor specialist, or you could become a spine surgeon like I did, or something called a functional neurosurgeon that helps with Parkinson's and tremors. But the path that I chose was the path that had the most intense suffering. people suffering from nerve pain and joint pain in their spine. People who have brain tumors are suffering in the sense that their brain isn't working and they might be dying soon. People with Parkinson's are suffering because their body doesn't do what they want. Same thing with people with tremors. But the people with spine problems are suffering this incredible pain, this nerve pain or joint pain that can come and go. Sometimes it just stays and it limits their ability to move around. And that kind of intense pain just overrides everything else. I chose to go into that part of neurosurgery, I think, because I had lived my life taking on these feelings that people close to me didn't want to feel. And that was not a good reason to go into spine surgery. Now, there were many other reasons too, but that was part of it. And this past year, well, really the last couple years, once I decided to leave neurosurgery and I realized that it was destroying me on the inside. So I left, and I've been spending time working on myself and learning about myself and healing on the inside. But then I realized that there were many facets of my life that were reflecting the same dynamic with other people of feeling their pain and them knowing that I can feel their pain and other feelings that they don't want, and then they give it to me. And I accepted it. I've been doing that for my whole life, 40 years. Well, a lot of stuff happened in the last several months, and I've come to the realization that this has been this pattern in my life. And it involves empathy, and it involves evil, which is somebody running away from themselves and lying about it and hurting others. So I've lived my whole life this way, and I think the saving grace is that even though at times I didn't want to experience life because it was too painful. I think the saving grace is that I actually love myself and I wish for my well-being. Even though at times I think I got confused and that I was feeling the self-hatred and lack of love of other people towards themselves. I was feeling that, and I think but deep down, I think deep down, I've always loved myself and wished for my spiritual well-being, like deep down to the core. And I think that has saved my life. And it's helped me realize that this is what's been going on for 40 years. I have chosen to take on other people's feelings that they didn't want. And that means that I can choose not to do that, Or I can choose to do that sometimes if it seems like it's the right thing to do. I can choose how much I want to take on, or how little to take on. It's not an on or off, it's a whole infinite number of gradations. Now that I'm more aware of this, I think I can live a life where I can better care for and protect myself, and also better care for and protect the people in my life that I care about and care about me. One thing I learned from my therapist is that no one should have to be in a relationship that is harmful and unhealthy. Nobody should have to be subject to emotional, verbal, or physical abuse. Even if that friend that you care about is a family member, a mother, father, brother, sister, son, or daughter, or cousin. Even if there are blood ties, nobody has... Oh, and I forgot, husband or wife, girlfriend or boyfriend. Nobody has to stay in a harmful, hurtful relationship. If somebody wishes their own destruction and the destruction of the world around them, you don't have to be part of that destruction. You can choose to be around people that have your well-being at heart. You can choose to have your own well-being at heart. It doesn't mean that you don't love that friend who is self-destructing. You can still wish for their spiritual well-being, but from a distance. Just like I can love, well, this is not a perfect analogy, but I can love a grizzly bear. Doesn't mean that I have to have a grizzly bear sleeping in my spare bedroom, because that grizzly bear is going to eat me one day. That's not a perfect analogy, because I don't think the grizzly bear wants their own self-destruction. But it kind of works, because a grizzly bear eats animals and is very, 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 very powerful and needs to eat a lot. And they wouldn't have any problem attacking and killing a person. But I don't think grizzly bears wish for their own self-destruction and hide from themselves under layers of lies. So it's not quite a perfect analogy, but I can still love a grizzly bear. I don't have to take care of the grizzly bear. The grizzly bear can take care of themselves. Oh, that's an important thing. I think some people can feel like they are stuck because their friend, who is self-destructing, is, well, helpless and hopeless. And so someone might feel stuck in that, well, if I let go of this friend that's self-destructing, well, they're going to die. And so people feel stuck and they say, oh, I have to keep enduring this abuse because I need to help this person I need to help this person because they can't help themselves and they're going to die if I don't help them. Or something terrible is going to happen if I don't help them. And I've been there too. And I had dinner with one of my friends who he's 70 or 80. I don't remember exactly how old he is. But I was recounting one of these stories that was happening in my life to my friend. And now he loves himself. He's a really cool dude. He's really, really, really cool dude. I'm like really grateful that he's my friend and I'm friends with him. But he said that he also had experienced things like that. And he had to go to therapy too when he was much younger. I think when he was in his 40s, so about my age. But now he's like 70 or 80. And he said what his therapist told him is that helplessness is the strongest form of control. So if you have a friend who is self-destructing and they're helpless, they can't help themselves, and you feel obligated to help them, that is the strongest form of control that human being can have over you. Then you end up sacrificing your life to their self-destruction, because it's a never-ending hole. It's a black hole. It's a bottomless pit. And they feed off of the person with empathy and feelings and love. They want love, but it's a never-ending hunger that is not reflected back. It's not a mutual love. They want our love. They want our support and help. But it's a never-ending sucking of life, like a vampire. I talked about vampires in the last video. So some people can feel stuck, that they are responsible for that other person's well-being. But you know what? First, that person is responsible for their own well-being. That person is responsible for helping themselves. That friend who's self-destructing is responsible for making choices that stop the self-destruction. In fact, no amount of help from a loving, empathetic friend can stop someone from self-destructing if they keep choosing to self-destruct. It will just bring that empathetic, loving friend into the vortex, the black hole of self-destruction. Now, is it possible for the friend to get out of that? Yes, they can choose to get out of that. But they have to choose. Nobody can choose for them. And this is a lesson that maybe other people know very early on in life, but it took me a long time to realize this. I'm 40 years old. And in many ways, in many aspects of my life, my job, my friendships with family and friends and acquaintances and even strangers that I run into on the path, I've seen this play out many times, but I didn't understand it. And it's like I don't know what the word is. It's like a karma that keeps replaying in my life. Well, I had kept replaying in my life in multiple different aspects of my life. And now, I mean, I think it came from when I was a child. Um, but now I understand. Now I understand it, and I'm choosing to be different, to live differently. I think there's a couple choices you could make here if you come to a situation like where I am. You could say, well, this empathy thing is so dangerous and harmful that I'm going to just shut it off completely. I don't want to feel anyone's pain. So I'm going to just shut off the empathy completely. And that's okay if it means I don't feel other people at all, even their good things. That is how you end up going down the dark triad path and becoming a narcissist and a psychopath. And then you view the world as harmful and dangerous, and now you're the victim. And then I think that's how you become this black hole that sucks the life out of everything around it. So yeah, that's not a good outcome. Then you become that friend that that you had closed yourself off to. That friend who was self-destructing, then you actually become a person who is self-destructing as well. So I think shutting off empathy completely is very harmful. But I think also being aware that some situations require empathy, and some situations require empathy to be toned down some. And also, relationships are a choice. You don't have to be close. You don't have to have a grizzly bear in your spare bedroom. You don't have to constantly help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. Now, if somebody needs help and they really would want to help themselves, let's say I'm hiking on some steep mountainside, like I was with Whiskey Rye a couple days ago. And I'll post that video. It was really pretty. That was a really pretty hike. But let's just say Whiskey Rye and I are hiking on a cliff, and we come across some person who cries out for help because they tripped and they fell down the cliff, and they got badly hurt, but they're still alive, but they're still in a dangerous place. They're only partially down the cliff, and they're holding on for dear life, and they're calling out for help. Well, Whiskey Rye and I would do our best to help that person. Well, they are helpless at that moment, but they have the desire to help themselves. That's a different situation, and I will choose to help that person, and I will choose to empathize with their situation and help them get back up and get medical attention for their injuries. But a person who has chosen not to help themselves, and a person who cannot see that their past choices and current choices are leading them down this path of self-destruction, and they blame everyone else. Well, if I try to help them, they're just going to blame me for their self-destruction. I don't want that. I can still wish their well-being, but from afar. That is a really, 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 really hard lesson. By doing that, by maintaining empathy, but knowing that and sometimes I have to turn it down and sometimes I have to turn it up, I think that is how I avoid becoming a black hole myself. I can still love myself, take care of myself, protect myself. I can still love others, and I can choose to help people that want to help themselves. I can choose to be there for people that care about themselves and care about me. I can choose to love my neighbor as I love myself. That's really important. That is the I think, most important lesson I've ever learned. And I'm happy that I can share it on this platform in this video. Now that lesson was bought with so many tears and heartache and pain and suffering and confusion. Whew. Well, I'm glad I learned it. And I am hopeful. So I've talked about hope. You can hope for all kinds of things. I could hope that Seattle turns in, the weather changes so that it's warm all the time and sunny, but no forest fires. But that's not going to happen. I could hope for something that's totally unrealistic and then have my hopes dashed when they never happen. But I'm hopeful that I'm looking forward to living life with this knowledge and choosing to live a life where I can love myself and love my neighbor just as I love myself, and be around people that also love me too. And they love themselves. And they help themselves. Yeah, that gives me hope. Well, I hope you have a great day or evening wherever you are, and that if you're hearing this, that maybe this hard-learned life lesson that I learned, well, maybe you already know this, and I'm happy for you if you already know this. But if maybe you didn't know this or you haven't really thought about it, I hope that this helps you also make choices to help yourself and live a life that has more love and peace in it.